All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's your good friend Pozzible here, and I'm back in action with a look at a movie that came out recently and was not very well received. That movie, of course, is Jupiter Ascending, brought to us by the Wachowskis, starring Mila Kunis and Channing Tatum. This particular movie, if you can imagine for 1 second taking Star Wars, mixing in a little bit of Blade Runner, throwing in a little bit of Dune, and adding the plot of Game of Thrones, then you would, you ate that meal, the waste that you produce is Jupiter Ascending. Basically, that's how it comes out to be. As you can imagine, I was not a fan of this movie. Not a lot of people were. The movie was presented at Sundance to a very unsuspecting audience, and they did not care for it either. So instead of just doing a very basic review, a very simple review where we talk about the plot and the acting and the downfalls, let's just cut to the chase. Let's discuss the top 5 reasons Jupiter Ascending sucked. Alright? And let's find out where they went wrong. First off, let's talk about the overuse of special effects. You know, back in the day when CGI was first being introduced, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad because you could really tell how horrible it was when they used the special effects. Today, CGI has gotten really, really good, but the problem with CGI is that we recognize it now. We can see CGI coming from a mile away just because we're so used to it. You know, it's the reverse effect. It doesn't affect us anymore because it's in everything nowadays. So when you overuse it, you really miss the point of it. I get that you want this to be a space epic, and that you're trying to make it look really cool, really fancy, make everything look really huge, like Blade Runner. But, you know, if you're going to go this far, you might as well have just made the whole thing CGI. You might as well have had like a, Final Fantasy meets Pixar style movie where it's serious and dark and, special effects, but at the same time, you didn't need the live action. I get that you want to put in the live action, make it look cool. Something for the kids, something where Channing Tatum can have these ridiculous skateboard effect on his shoes. Of course, they just use gravity, everything does, to move around. And you get to steal a little bit of Back to the Future in there too, don't you? And I know you want to make it look good, but if you're going to have special effects and you don't make it look good, what's the point? Which brings me to number 4, Channing Tatum's makeup. You can't fool audiences that well nowadays. So when you have Channing Tatum trying to play this wolf/human hybrid, then you got to make it look at least a lot better than this. See, we can't be fooled, This is Channing Tatum in the raw, a real normal person. Notice how his head's not as long as it is here? And of course, everyone complains about the Spock ears. Spock ears don't bother me as much as how elongated his face looks in comparison to how he looks here. Channing Tatum makeup was a big discretion, especially the eyes. Just too dark around the eyes. I get why they had to have it and all that. It just didn't really fit, Which brings us to number 3. The extreme explanations. Science fiction is not just the introduction to a story, but it can be the introduction to a whole universe of ideas. And that's where the problem lies. We get that this is going to be a complex world and that there's going to be a lot going on. But there's too much going on, and that leads to nothing but exposition. Nothing but Mila Kunis just staring blankly at us. It's kind of like, this other movie that came out. But the one thing that killed this movie, along with the extreme explanations, was all that intergalactic red tape. I couldn't stand because that's what they were explaining. We get that, it's a universe. So you don't just explain the science fiction element of it. You got to explain the policy and procedure. And in this movie, the bad guys were so incorporated that you had to go, they had to explain their policies and procedures and, wills and all that stuff. It kind of reminded me of, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. We didn't want to see the bureaucracy. We didn't want to see all this council meetings and negotiations. We want to get to the action, to the thrills, to the whole point and purpose. Now, I get you want to make a different kind of story, But guys, there's a limit. We don't want to be like this. Mila Kunis, during half this movie, when she was actually in it, was just her staring blankly at people as they tried to explain to her how their world worked, how their universe worked. You know, she has our understanding, but now she has to learn their understanding, and it just didn't go. And that's why this movie had such a stupid plot. You know, I have tried a few times to explain this movie to people. Not easy to do, because it's very complicated and you want to make sure you don't give away spoilers. But it's almost impossible not to give away spoilers because, you know, just this idea that some lady's being hunted by aliens and Channing Tatum is going to protect her, that doesn't help. Despite the fact that that happens over and over again. You know, that's the main crux of this movie. Mila Kunis goes into a room, meets someone, she talks to her about how this universe works. Then we leave her, never see her again, and Mila Kunis goes on to the next person. Each time Channing Tatum shows up at the last minute. You know, sometimes to rescue her, sometimes just to show up, despite all the damage he's done and everything. The plot of this movie is one that is just too incredibly stupid to even mention sometimes. Basically, if it comes down to this, let me show you the part where people, I'll explain it to you and stop where people always tell me to stop. Mila Kunis is supposed to be the genetic reincarnation of these people's mother. You see her quote-unquote daughter right next to her on the left, and Mila Kunis, because she has the exact same genetic makeup as their mother, they take that as reincarnation. Now, I would never believe in something like that, but hey, different stroke for different folks. If that's what they believe, fine. However, her mom, Mila Kunis' character, before she died, the statue they're looking at, she decided to put herself in her will. So in case she ever got reincarnated, she could get all her stuff back, or a majority of her stuff back. And when people hear that, they're like, okay, stop. Enough. Believe me, it's much, much more complicated than that. There's some stuff about how the world is supposed to be in danger, but you really don't care, mostly because of the terrible acting. Let me be very clear. If I had to hear this character talking like this one more time, I was gonna shoot somebody. And there were some people in the theater too with me at the time. His quote-unquote character choice ultimately killed this movie more than anything else. Don't get me wrong. I give kudos to Mila Kunis, and I give kudos to Channing Tatum. I felt they did a great job. Sean Bean as well. 3 very veteran actors, 3 people who know how to make a movie. And there were times when I thought I was going to like this movie. But then this guy shows up. And when he starts talking the way he's talking, which I won't do right now, that really hurts the voice. But when he starts talking and he just starts to try to act, and of course exposition the shit out of this story, because that's what you have to do in this movie, is exposition again and again and again, just so that it's clear what's happening, why it's happening, but not getting very excited about it. It's more of a lecture than a movie. You know, they made this way too complicated. They put in way too much. And, you know, for me, when I was watching this movie, I actually got a feeling that Jupiter Ascending would have made a better video game than an actual movie. Playing, of course, Channing Tatum's character, Kane, it would not be fun playing Mila Kunis' character at all. She is just there, you know, very passive for the quote-unquote heroine of the movie. She has her knight in shining armor with the Spock ears, always there to save the day at the last minute. Over and over again, it just drives me nuts. And, you know, when I first saw this movie, it was like getting run over by a train. You didn't know what hit you. It took a while, and then when you finally figured out what it was, it didn't help it. Things didn't get better. When it finally made clear what was it about, it doesn't help this movie. It doesn't put it together. It's just a lame attempt at being something it's not. It's trying to be a classic movie. It's trying to be over the top. It's trying to be cool. And it bombs on every scale. I'm not going to lie, though. The visual effects were nice. They were just overdone. I liked watching this movie. It was interesting to see the effects. But after a while, those effects dragged on you. After a while, the story and explanations really dragged on you because you were like, guys, let's take a breath and try to figure out what he was saying, what they were doing, and why we are leaving this person that's never coming back. They throw in so much, but nothing comes back. It's like, okay, there's this, and then it's like, that's it. And it ends with a typical, expected Hollywood happy ending. Nothing wrong with that. But getting there was too long and not worth the time or the money. Jupiter Ascending gets a pass. This is the must-pass movie of the year, and I hate to say that for a movie we're only in the middle of February. I'm not happy saying that. But I was really upset with this movie. I was hoping maybe that I would find something better about it, and I didn't. So if you're on the fence about Jupiter Ascending, take my advice and take the advice of all the other critics out there. Pass on it. All right, guys, that's it for me today. We will see you at the theaters.